Hey guys, you're watching Halborn Flash videos. We're talking to the BSV Association today. Ásgeir and Siggi, very welcome to this Flash video. Thank you for joining in for this chat. Maybe for our audience, very quickly, if you could just introduce yourself and we take it from there.
Yeah, thanks for having us. This is great. I'm the youngest, so I'll kick off. So, Ásgeir Óskarsson, I'm heading the BSV Association since January. I'm relatively new to the blockchain space. I've only been in the blockchain space for about a year and a half. Before that, in engineering, in traditional finance, even a small stint as a teacher. But now, very, very proud and happy with the job at the BSV Association, where I also get to work with my brother, who can do the next introduction.
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for having us. I'm Siggi. I'm doing most of the technology parts, so the hard part. He does all the easy parts. And the CTO at the BSV Association and leading also the developments of our Teranode node implementation that did 1 million transactions a second last year. So very proud of that.
Wow, 1 million transactions a second is quite a milestone there. Congratulations. All right, for those less familiar with BSV Association, maybe you can also tell us a little bit about that and what you're building.
Yes. So the easy part, apparently, what Siggy is all about. That's what I do. But no, it's very rewarding work. So the BSV Association is a nonprofit. We're based out of Switzerland, like many of the blockchain foundations and associations are. And our main goal, main mission is enabling the adoption of the BSV blockchain, which is a layer one proof of work UTXO based blockchain. Um, and we do that by engaging with our developer community, like sort of organizing hackathons and stuff like that. We do that by creating partnerships with be it academic institutions or private institutions or public institutions. Like we have great relationships with universities in Europe and in the UK, partnerships in organizations like Blockchain for Europe to be on top of things in the European space. And just by going out there and creating awareness about not just the BSV blockchain itself, of which we are sort of also the stewards by running, making sure the network's always up and running, but also enabling and the success of our ecosystem. So companies that are building on top of BSV. So at the end of the day, the BSV blockchain is just the underlying infrastructure. And on top of that, you can do so many amazing things. And there's so many really cool use cases out there that are built. And I think, yes, you can go into more details on the technological part, but the technology that is in BSV blockchain basically enables it to be really the underlying infrastructure, and then you can do any imaginable use case on top of that, wherever there's a need for, say, trust and transparency and a distributed ledger in the business. So yeah, Siggy, you can go into the harder part then.
I'll keep it a little bit shorter, but the harder part is now we're doing the node implementation, which is basically the big blockchain network is based on nodes, mining nodes that are communicating with each other. They're creating blocks, propagating blocks, and doing things like that. And there's a lot of work being done on scaling that up to do the 1 million transactions a second node implementation. But besides that, if we have this kind of massive scale, the way that you would interact with the blockchain needs to be very, very different because you can't run your own node anymore. So on top of that, we're working very hard on getting user-friendly libraries to create transactions and things like that, but also something called overlay nodes. And I think that's so we're looking at this very differently and introducing these new concepts into working with the blockchain. And that's all because of the scalability. We want to have a blockchain that can serve the world, not something that's just for hobby projects. We want the big corporations to come and try to break it, with the massive use cases. That's our goal. So that's why we call ourselves a utility blockchain. We're not interested in the price going up. We actually don't look at the price anymore. We look at how many transactions are we processing, how many transactions can we process, and are we moving in the right direction in that area. So we're focusing much more on that. And that's where Halborn actually comes in, helping us with the security audit of our most important part, the node software that we're working on.
Fantastic. That was a very power-packed reply, actually. So you guys help with scalability, microtransactions, you're in a utility blockchain. That's more or less covered it probably. But if you could simplify the problem, the main key problem that you're solving, what is that really?
A good question. So key problem that we're solving, I would say, is trust. I think if you look at it, And you see it also in all kinds of currently sort of reports coming up. There's a lack of trust in this
Yeah,
world. And AI is having adding fantastic value to the world, but it also increases it need a further decrease of trust, right? So
absolutely.
I think trust is a key topic that a blockchain can solve because you have this verifiable data on an immutable ledger that, and especially we're also a public blockchain, so anyone can access it. And just to be able to debunk a myth, you can still have privacy on a public blockchain, right? So it's not that the data is out there for anyone to see. There's a lot of potential possibilities to actually implement privacy on a public blockchain, but it's actually verifiable. And then this data can then be shared. So if you think of a supply chain where there's multiple players or stakeholders that are actually need to interact with the same set of data or need to get the same set of data, this public ledger essentially enables this trust, and then it adds value to the supply chain because anyone can look at the data, they can then act upon that same set of data, and there's really cool use cases out there in our ecosystem, in with carbon offsetting, where there again trust. If like greenwashing is a major problem in carbon offsetting, if they're all looking at the same set of data, you can actually solve that problem. So and just to be sometimes I say we're the boring part, say, of blockchain because we're just one aspect. Again, the blockchain is also just one aspect of this business, right? It's the aspect of your business that actually enables this trust and this sharing of data. And if that adds value to your business, it makes a lot of sense to introduce blockchain in your business. Not just use blockchain for the sake of using blockchain. I think AI is now in that hype cycle where everyone is looking at AI. Blockchain has passed that already. So, but there are real use cases out there where blockchain does play a significant value. And the current focus is very much on, say, stablecoins and fintech because you have this fast instant settlement, etc. But I think that's just the tip of the iceberg of what blockchain can actually do. And there's really cool, as I said, a couple of cool companies in our ecosystem that are working on really great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, just adding a little, I totally agree. I think one of the things that I think the blockchain industry has been doing in the last 15, 16 years is trying to yeah, pump the price, get the price up. It's all about the price. It's about trading and all that stuff. And like I said, that's not very interesting, because basically what we have is a digital notary. I don't know if you guys ever worked with something like that, but a digital note, you can go to a notary and have things notarized, and that costs a lot of money. That saves you when you have some legal proceedings later. Well, blockchain is something that can do that almost for free.
Mm.
So anything that you would normally go to a notary for is a potential thing that can be replaced by a blockchain, plus lots of other use cases. So the most interesting things are when you actually need this in front of a court or in front of the government to prove something, to prove that what you are saying is the truth, and something that you happened a year ago, 2 years ago is actually still valid. Um, so I don't think we haven't even started scratching the surface of what's possible and what they could actually do in our society. And the reason for that is because we haven't had any scale. Nobody has been able to build applications that really truly scale to
Yeah,
the large population. So that's why scalability is so incredibly important. It's not about the scalability, but it's about the use cases that are possible because we can scale.
And I think
absolutely. I
also
mean,
maybe
yes, go
maybe
on.
to add on the scalability also, because you look at that from a technical perspective, but if you look at it from a business perspective, you're also talking about business resilience, right? You're talking about my business now. I have so many customers. Will I be able to handle this in 10 years if my business is successful? Yes or no? If I increase the number of clients. And I think that's why scalability is also just, and same with the block, it's about resilience at the end of the day. So it's adding value and it's also building a certain security and forte in your business, at least in the tech stack as well, so that you're using.
I
If you
mean,
look at it
that's
from a
like a,
business,
yeah, that's like a plethora of problems actually that you're solving, and having the ethos based on trust, proof of truth, and building business resilience is quite the problem set to handle actually. So there's so many use cases and there's so many users from those use cases as well. Would you like to highlight some of the top features and users that are on your platform right now?
I'd highlight two sectors that are currently very up and coming, and one is in the stable coins so in financial transactions and especially cross-border remittances. So
Yeah.
essentially cross-border payments. In the old days, or actually nowadays, still people rely heavily on Western Union or other traditional providers where the fees are outrageous, and blockchain actually drops that settlement time to instant and the fee to, I think it's what is it, a tenth of a cent. So there's a new stable coin out on BSV called Money. I think it's currently available in the US only, but they're looking to expand. So it's definitely a cool use case, and that's just the start of it, because then that potential with remittances is huge, especially on a blockchain where you can scale and the fees are low, right? It's like if you'd have to pay gas fees for every transaction, again, the added value of blockchain then reduces a bit. So it definitely highlights sort of the fintech aspect. And you can even look at use as players like Tokenowade, which is looking into tokenization of derivatives and traditional financial instruments. And that's also where the balance of with traditional finance and blockchain comes in, right? Just use it as a very secure, very stable, fast, cheap layer to actually do your ongoing business or expand your business and just make your business better. So the
Maybe I can add
financial,
something to that because I think there was a narrative I think 10, 12 years ago that this was be your own bank. The blockchain is going to replace the banks. And just to add what I said, this is not what we don't think this. The blockchain is going to help the banks to be more efficient, lower costs, and drive prices for consumers down as well. They should use this to settle between themselves. They can use this as payment rails. They can, like you said, with tokenization and things like that. It's not about replacing banks. It's about introducing a very secure, scalable truth layer in all these aspects. So everything that you just said is also something that would benefit banks if they put that into their operations.
yeah. And just another one that I find really fascinating, and it's going to come up, especially in Europe. There's new regulations coming in regarding digital product passports, essentially the traceability of goods and supply chain. And again, this is what I highlighted earlier, right? If you have multiple players that are sharing data, how can you trust that this is really coming from what it is that it's saying that it is that it's coming from, right? So that's where the blockchain could come in and help these supply chains. And the consumers may not be asking for it yet, but the regulations are starting to kick in. Like for batteries, it's going to be in 2027, and for other products, going to be by 2030. It's essentially within Europe. Every product I think has to have a digital product passport, and this traceability and the sharing of data and being able to use that data then for certificates or even for reward mechanisms. And I think that's also the beauty of it, um, because you can use it for this supply chain tracking. But then once you have that, you also are sitting on this again, this data, and potentially you could use loyalty programs out of it. You could expand it ever. So that's why I said it's definitely going to make businesses better, faster, more efficient. But then you could even think about what can you then do with that. So I think that's super fascinating. And there's a couple of companies that are already working with it in the dairy industry in Spain, in the poultry industry in the UK. And there's a really cool use case, which I always highlight. So Niels, apologize, but I'm going to highlight it again. Uh, is a shipping container. So this shows really this use case. So containers come into the port of Antwerp and they have a certain offset of carbons that they need to agree on. So this gets put on the ledger. And then the next company actually accesses this and calculates the required offset for this to get the sustainability certificate. The same set of data is then accessed by whoever's doing the company doing the reforestation, who then confirm that the reforestation has been done. And at the end of the day, there's a sustainability certificate coming out of it. All just because they are able to share this data in a very efficient and low cost way. And that's another set of regulations relevant in Europe called CSRD, which is essentially corporate sustainability reporting. It's going to be even more relevant. Like now it only applies to the bigger players, but it will potentially expand. And there's so many of these cool use cases out there that are actually just maybe 20 years ago you couldn't even think of how we'd be able to do that in a way that we can work together. You'd have to rely on some centralized database and just trust each other. And now you have this layer of trust in between. So it's fascinating. And so those are the two sectors which I find fascinating and I think are the biggest. So potentials in the coming years. But like Siggy also said, in 10 years, who knows what use cases are going to be possible on blockchain as well, right? Or using blockchain. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, that was such a cool endless plethora of the use cases really that you can come up with. Love the product portfolio idea and also love the sustainability use cases. And of course, there's more coming in. So when you look at all of that, what in 2025 or even just before stood out to you as some of the top milestones you've been able to achieve with BSV?
Our biggest milestone was in 2024 in the May when we did a 1,000,000 TPS test on our infrastructure for 2 weeks. So we didn't do it for 2 minutes or 2 hours. We ran it for 2 weeks, which proves that this thing is actually viable for long term. Because you get into like an equilibrium situation, which is very important. So I don't want to get into too many technical details, but that was a huge milestone. And I think also if you talk about 2025, we are now delivering on our developer SDKs. So all the tools for our developers, the overlays, libraries, and things like that are being delivered now. And there's a hackathon that's happening now I think it's this weekend. Yeah, this weekend there's a hackathon in Texas with $55,000 prize money. So
Oh,
it's a
wow.
huge thing.
This will
And
be published afterwards, though, probably, Siggy. So
oh, it's fine. So you missed that, but it's no, but it's that's like a combination of delivering on all these tools to be able to build on the blockchain on a scalable blockchain. So even if the blockchain is doing millions of transactions, you can actually build tools that won't fall over, that are still working, and you can still have control and things like that. So I think that's a really great and exciting step for us now, even though it's just still early days.
What's your favorite milestone to come in on the technical side in the next 1 year that you're
It's
planning on?
it's the delivery of Teranode, which is the scalable node. We still need to deliver that. That we're doing the security audit on Halborn, which is supposed to be done at the end of the month. And when that goes out and people can take a look at the code, they can play with it. They can, start building their applications also on top of that, because of most users and developers shouldn't be doing that. But of course, you have some infrastructure players, like you would have treasuries and explorers and things like that. They need to build on top of that and then get feedback. And that's going to be very, very exciting for us.
Okay, awesome. Ásgeir, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Teranode and what's like a great way to understand it and kind of see how it tangibly works.
yes, so I'm not the technical person, so
No,
that
but
maybe
you know everything about it, though.
maybe that's why it's good that I can explain it, right? So essentially, what happens in a blockchain, if you like currently our network supports, I would say around 15,000 transactions per second, right? Which is already a lot. And the actual usage is not there, but it's also sort of a chicken egg story. So what Siggy and his team essentially did is go back to the core principles and what is it actually that a node needs to do to comply with the protocol. So all the rules that we have, all the script engine, all the transaction validation. So what is it exactly that you do? What it needs to do. Then if you think of that as a concept, so basically you have this node software that's been developing over years, and now they basically took a hard pause and said, okay, so philosophically, what is it that actually a node needs to do? And then they built that into a microservices architecture so that each of these can scale independently. And that's how you essentially are able to, and that plus some other new concepts that they introduced just to make sure that the
Some
architecture can
magic.
some magic fairy. That essentially enables rather than a monolithic software that will be very expensive to scale up, just a horizontally scalable software which you can scale up as you need. So the new architecture is sort of groundbreaking there. And Siggy last year on a conference explained also the why for that, because essentially if you have a horse, you
Mhm.
can't put a Formula One race engine in a horse, right?
Yes.
So for that, actually, you need to make the shift towards a race car, and for that, you need to actually define. Okay, so this is the race car. Now we put this engine in it, and we worked with really great partners like Aerospike, yourselves, AWS, to actually get where we are now and to get this 1 million TPS going. So it's essentially going from a horse and carriage to a race car, and for that you needed to do some changes. And I'm happy that I was part of that project for like 2 or 3 months last year, in my old role. But that's essentially how I would explain it to a to a non-Siggy. Yeah.
I think the horse and the race car metaphor is a little bit tired, but I think it's still it's true. It's that the old blockchains they're living in an old world about how this should be. And yeah, so we're just trying to rethink that, which is
And I
also a
think
little bit scary. I mean, there's a lot of changes that we're going to make. That's why it's so important to work with you guys to make sure that we're not doing anything really stupid.
And I think what's important for other people watching in the blockchain space, this is all on layer one. This is no layer twos on top of. This is the layer one protocol that is actually achieving this rate. So
Right.
there's no need for layer twos. Yeah.
I actually love that example of a race car and the horse. It makes it very visual and easy to understand. So now, as we're building so many things, what's the one piece of advice you'd give out to builders and developers on BSV?
I would say try the new software that's out there. Try the libraries. Do some vibe coding if you want. It's fine. Just don't go into production with that, but try it out. We have these libraries in Python, in Go, and in TypeScript. There's also a very neat smart contract framework, which is TypeScript based, which you could use. And there's a lot of possibilities out there. So I would actually, on developer side, I would say don't worry about the Node software because 99% of developers won't have to interact with it ever, but focus on what this then enables for you. Like think of the business value thereof, right? Like where does this come into place? And also consider that on PSV transactions will be very cheap. Then I think now it's like what is it, a thousandth of a cent or something. So think of what use cases you could enable if you need like a lot of transactions on chain. So I know of an IoT company in the States. They are working with 9,000 IoT devices, putting data on chain every 5 seconds, and their operating costs are around 6,000 USD per year just for that. And the amount of data you get for that, and that they can then start getting into talks with insurers, etc. It's mind blowing. So just try it out, I would say. They're all on GitHub. They're all available. Do some coding, and people like me and perhaps you as well, Rabda, just do some vibe coding and see if you can get some cool ideas going.
A lot of people, I think in the last couple of years, you've heard some people talking about and waiting for others to do something. And I think that's the one tip I'd give developers. If there is something that is bothering you, that you have an idea, or you're thinking, why aren't these people doing that? Go do it. Do it yourself. Don't wait. Go, pick up Windsurf or I don't know, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever tool you want to use, vibe code the hell out of that thing, and just experiment, experiment, experiment. Try to get it up there. The costs of actually doing things on our mainnet are very, very low. I think for $34, you can get 100 million transactions.
Amazing.
So you can vibe code the hell out of that thing for years probably. So go build.
And give feedback as well, right? Like these
Absolutely.
libraries are there.
Absolutely.
Give feedback if there's other things that
Both.
we may need it. Siggy would be able to then pick that up and put it in his roadmap and give it to his team. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I guess the best way for developers is to just try it out at the end of the day.
Yep.
All right. So with that, we have already alluded to security. We're working together on this Teranode project as well. So what we're really excited about seeing with BSV is that security has always been your top priority, right? So how did your team internally make sure of this?
It starts with consciousness. You just be conscious of what you're doing, but there's an other aspect to it as well that there's a lot of experience in the team. So a lot of things we've done many times before. So that's one aspect. But there's also a lot of security is actually built into the protocol because it's very, very difficult to do anything to mess things up. So if you imagine you're building a web application and you have an endpoint, you're doing something and you have a database, all these normal things, how do you make sure that there's nothing crazy happening in there? That's you need a lot of security around that, a lot of checking. That security that you normally have in applications is actually built into the protocol. It's built into the Bitcoin protocol. Every transaction is built in because there's digital signatures inside the transaction. So if you are trying to send us you can send us nonsense all day and we will immediately see it and ignore it because it's not a valid transaction, it's not a valid signature. So it's I think the security of the system is probably just due to experience. We've done this many times before, so we're doing a lot of that same stuff. But it's also very comfortable that it's all built into the protocol itself.
That's always great to have the internal security embedded into the code itself. So now that we're partnering together, I also want to ask you, how did you go about checking out your external auditors and deciding which cybersecurity partner you wanted? And how has the experience been thus far with Halborn?
Well, so there's a lot of very smart people out there. There's a lot of companies that have smart people that can do good stuff, and I'm pretty sure they're all good to security. But the thing that stood out for me was a very, very big click about the mentality and the way to approach the project and being very agile and open and collaborative and looking at this as a partnership. We're working together. We're in close contact with each other. We can move things around, things like that. So I think that was, for me, that was the biggest selling point. It's not we're doing this SOW for 3 months, and then after the 3 months, we're going to evaluate that. No, no, no. We're doing that every week, and we're talking about that continuously and steering in a different direction if necessary halfway through the project. So that flexibility and that agility was the key for me.
And maybe if I can add, I wasn't involved in the selection process, but Siggi was. But now I've observed it from the side. There's also just a drive and a certain commitment, and like Gabi was visiting our offices last week, and it was just fun also even to work with him, right? So shout out to him. But it's good work. We get high quality people that it's fun to work with, and that share the energy that we have about the potential and about this software that we're building. So that's really nice to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of teamwork as well. With that, we'll bring this chat to a wrap. And for our users and our viewers, please watch out for all the cool BSV updates coming in and stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining me on this.